Our lives are a string of insights, flashes of inspiration that can be the catalyst for new ideas. However, our pace of life these days means we tend to miss some of them completely. I'm Dave Hill, and I'm the host of the Simple Reflections podcast, a fortnightly series of interviews with people from all walks of life. Our conversations are an invitation to reflect on some of the simple insights my guests have had that have gone on to have a profound impact on their lives. So grab a cuppa and a biscuit, join us, slow down for a little while and see what shows up for you. Welcome to the next episode of the Simple Reflections podcast. Today I'm joined by a really good friend and colleague, Baz Melia. Baz and I served together in the army for 25 years. Baz was a rifleman for nearly 40 years. He put in a significantly longer shift than I did. And we still work closely together today. So a number of you will be aware that I work closely with an organisation called the Rifleman Programme, which Baz set up 5 or 6 years ago now. I can't quite remember where it was. And I just thought it would make sense to bring him in to talk about what we're up to and why, just to sort of share some ideas. His titles, I suppose, these days are head of the Always a Rifleman Programme and head of the Riflemen's Association. The two things fit neatly together. We just haven't quite managed to neatly fit them together yet, but that's why he's got both of those hats. So Baz, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today.
Well, Dave, I think firstly, when we met many years ago in Wheaton Barracks, I could never have envisaged we'd be sat on a podcast. They didn't exist for a start, did they?
Yeah, that's the one thing. Yeah.
But I never would have thought that, nearly 26 years later, we would be collaborating on mental health for all good things, people. And never did I think that we would be doing some of the amazing stuff that we are doing. But thank you for allowing me to come on the podcast.
You're very welcome. I think my first proper meeting with you were telling me off about something that I was sort of in charge of, but hadn't anything to do with the ordering of. But that's for a different day.
I remember it well. But ultimately, when you pay the big bucks and you are in charge of stuff, I've only got one person I come looking for when it all goes
that's
wrong.
fine. That's fine. I was asked to run the range. I had nothing to do with what was ordered for it. But there we go. We'll park that one.
Yeah.
Getting back to the reason why we're here today, rather than reminiscing over my misdemeanors in the past. What is it that gets you up and out of bed in the morning, doing the work that you do day in, day out, almost minute in, minute out, at times? Because it is full on, and it has been relentless for the last 5 or 6 years for the work that you've been doing. And maybe even caveat that with a few stats of where we are and what we've been up to.
I never thought for a moment that the problem was as big as it truly is. So it was 3 attempts at getting me to do this job by the headquarters, and I was a busy chap in the Middle East setting up my own business, so I was never going to come along freely and do this. There needed to be a good reason for it, and there was a succession of suicides, and although I didn't know those people, I'd served alongside them. And then there was another succession of suicides. And that information slowly cascaded through my very complex mind to tell me that somebody needed to do something about it. And whilst I was there shouting at the computer for somebody to do something about it, all of a sudden it dawned on me that somebody was trying to do something about it, and that's why they were calling me. So after I calmed myself down, I thought, okay, if they think I can do something about it, I'll do something about it. So I took a bit of a sabbatical from work in Dubai, and I thought 3 months, I'd be able to fix this. Surely whatever it is I do, within 3 months, I'll have done my analysis, written my approach, and then start delivering. I could walk away. Here we are, nearly 6 years down the line, and I'm still doing it. So to answer the question specifically, it's because the problem is far greater than I ever thought. And it's far more complex than I ever thought. And I talk to a lot of people about the wicked problem. So that's a problem where when you fix the solution, it moves back into the problem. And you fix, or you deliver the solution, it moves back into the problem. And every time you fix something, it just produces another problem. And this one has another dynamic because there are two distinct halves of what we do. The first half is mental health within the serving community, and the second half is mental health outside of the serving community. And this is why the problem is wicked. The solution sits within the serving community, but the problem only manifests itself after service. So the answer comes before the problem, and that's where it becomes really difficult to engineer a solution to fix it, because I'm constantly trying to fix a problem that I can see, but I don't have the answer for, and I don't have the resources for. So you kind of have to reverse engineer it. And now when you reverse engineer it, you have to go back even further before the service starts and into education. So you got education, service, and then life after service, and trying to find a solution post-education, post-service, and into adulthood to fix those problems is quite complicated. So that's why it's taken more than the 3 months I thought it would take me to do. And I suppose that's what drives me to get up and keep cracking at it, because the solutions that we employ, and you're part of that solution, the solutions we employ work really well when they're focused. A bit like a fire hose on a fire. You know, one fire engine, small fire, you can deal with it quite quickly. And I think that's the beauty of the program, is provide it has somebody to drive that fire engine to the fire, you can deal with it quite well.
Thanks, Baz. Two things, I suppose, before we move on. What would you see is the problem? What are we trying to do collectively? We'll sort of start with that question, maybe come back to the one in a second.
So I think the thing that collectively we are trying to achieve is balancing somebody's emotional turbulence post-service. So the emotional turbulence that you generate from your service is not necessarily the trauma or the reason you become dysfunctional after service. We call it the broken windows theory, which was an American police problem-solving model, where there's a broken window, and if you cover it up and you don't deal with it, the next window to it will break. You cover that up, the next window to it will break, and you can carry on walking down that street, and all you're doing is covering up these broken windows, which means that the next window down is going to get broken, and you'll just cover it up. Well, if you have that theory in your mind that all you're doing is covering up broken windows, at some point somebody's going to come along and tear all them boards off the windows, and you're just going to see a mass of broken windows. That's the challenge, is whilst you're serving, all those broken windows you bring with you from your childhood, so adverse childhood experiences. As a good example, I would say I'd been through 3 divorces before I was 16. I was never married, but my mum and my father, my stepfather, and then my other stepfather, there's 3 divorces. There's a lot of broken windows, a lot of mental anguish in there. Not that I knew it was, but all of that, plus the other stuff I got up to in Liverpool as a young lad, I think generated a lot of broken windows. Of course, when I take those windows into military service, and it's no secret that the police had suggested if I didn't join the army, things may not turn out so well the next time I appear on call. So those broken windows then are covered. They're covered by my fellow riflemen, the boys who won't let me be on my own, the boys who won't let me feel depressed, the boys who won't let my standards slip. They're constantly covering those windows for me. And as you grow up through your service history, you deal with trauma within the military. So, deaths in combat, deaths through train accidents, deaths through suicide. And along with your own domestic traumas, your mother dies and your sister dies, and on it goes, and so on. All those traumas are masked for you by this huge, it's an army, a huge array of people in your life who are going, we'll get you through this, Baz, we'll get you through that, we're going to do this for you. And even a chain of command, when things aren't working well, go, right, we're just going to take the pressure off, I'm going to give you an easier job. Everybody's very compassionate about you as a person within the army, and that's a real strength. But nobody's ever dealing with the true problems, which are accrued over a long period of time, and they're sustained by this massive camaraderie. And then you take that camaraderie away when you leave, and all of a sudden you're on your own, and all them windows now are unmasked, and you can look down the street. 40 years of that street, by the way, you can look down 40 years of that street and see nothing but misery and trauma that you never ever fixed and never addressed. So what are we trying to do? Well, strange enough, retrospectively, we're going back down that street now, me, you, and the other boys on the team, and we're trying to repair them windows as we go back until eventually we get to the one window that really is the sticking point, and we go, right, this is not just a window, mate, it's the frame and the wall and everything. So we've now got to fix that. So I suppose that's what we're trying to do, is balance out all of the traumas accrued from childhood to the end of your service. That helps you settle into life as a civilian and empowers you to go on and do good in your life, and keeps you stable once you've left that. So effectively, what we do collectively is we replicate and replace the chain of command and the camaraderie and the 600-700 people that you had in a battalion. With just the 10 of us, that's what we try and replicate.
Thanks, Baz. It's, the community just for our regiment is enormous. And it can look like we're a tiny little dot in that, but actually, I think one of the beauties of the program, as I see it, is the speed at which things can, we can respond based on the network that we know that exists. So, you mentioned the 10 of us. There's 10 of us that answer a free phone number and respond to online messages that come in. The 10 of us aren't solving all of those things that crop up. We've got hundreds of volunteers across the country, in fact across the globe now, that we can lean on and link up with people locally. And it's that local connection actually that does the heavy lifting. Because as you said, the thing that buoys people through service is the network around them, the small network around them, their fire team, their section, whatever scale you want to look at, their mates. And something that you and I have both come across a lot over the last 6 or so years of looking at this is people feeling completely isolated and thinking they've got nowhere to turn, whilst having a phone book full of phone numbers of their mates that they could reach out to if they felt they were able to, but for some reason they tell themselves they're not. And then when you scratch that, you go, well, what happens if one of your friends picks the phone up and calls you? What would you do? Oh, I'd answer in a heartbeat. I'd be there for them. So we've got this weird split between not being prepared to put our own hand up because we don't want to upset anybody or cause problems or be a burden, and at the same time complete selfless commitment to our friends. If they put their hands up, we'll be there for them. And there's this disconnect. And that for me is that's where the real strength lies, in helping break that. Why am I different from any of my friends in terms of being able to reach out and get in touch with someone? What's stopping me? And it's normally that business of not wanting to cause a problem, or also not wanting to lift the drains up and have a look and see what's actually going on, which always looks more unpleasant in your own mind while you're thinking about it than it is with someone there to keep you company, whether that's on the end of the telephone or the end of a text message or physically in person.
I think a lot of it is down to do with your personal standing and how you perceive yourself in society. And there are very few noble professions left in a country which haven't been unpicked by a succession of changes in society. And I think one of them is the aspect of soldiering, because soldiers have always been the blunt force instrument that tackles government solutions, and therefore it doesn't get to choose. It's sent. It's not elected because it is an extension of political will, and they go without debate. They do as they're told, and I think that is a psychologically beautiful position for somebody to be in, because it elevates him into on a higher plane than the rest of the community, because he's going to go anywhere in the world at any time, and it doesn't matter how many other things going on in his life. There's nobody else in the country does that. Nobody, unless you're in a semi-quasi military organization, because they don't do it for money. They're not all paid very well. They're all on the same rate. Nobody gets extra bonuses. So it's not for money, it's for love. And it's not love of the country, it's normally love of the people that they're with. So I tell you that because I think by putting yourself on a very, very high pedestal, and the system puts you there, you've got a long way to fall. And you by reaching out, more about that in a minute, but by reaching out, you do accidentally fall off that pedestal. And so it's no surprise to me, out of the last 6 suicides that we've had one officer, and the rest, bar one, have been some sort of NCO. Because the more rank you get, the higher up that standing you put yourself. So it's a real long fall for them, and that makes it harder for them to try and ask for help. And there are two phrases that I absolutely detest, and signposting is one of them, because that's just a commercial buzzword to make you sound busy. And there'll be plenty of people drawing down money on a business that just does signposting. It's idleness personified. And the other one I really hate it is reach out, because that is the problem. Reaching out is the problem. So what we do, as you know, is we reach in, because we know people won't reach out. And there's the danger of some of the other trends and traits of what we've been doing as a society. We've been communicating on WhatsApp and communicating on Messenger and on all the other miserable social media things that we use. And they consider that sufficient to deal with a really challenging mental health issue, and they'll say, I've reached out, I've reached out. Reaching out is the world's worst thing. Reaching in is what needs to happen. And the difference between what we do and anybody else on this planet is we run a counter suicide program. And that counter suicide program is uniquely different to suicide prevention. The ONS will tell you that there was 253 suicides of veterans within the UK in the year it did its poll. And I think that's replicated every year. The thing is that the only people who are studying and analysing who it is who's dying by suicide is us. And we only analyse the people we know. So the rifles work out at about 3% of the army. So 3% of the army knows who's dying, and 3% of the army know why they've died. That leaves you a whole 97% of not knowing. But the ONS knows how many people are dying. So knowing that it is a military problem as well as a civilian problem, we've done our analysis that says we can't deal with other veterans, but we can deal with our veterans. So this is known the knowns. We know where our guys are. We know who they're connected to. So we can focus on. So this is me explaining how we reach in. We know who they are. We know where they live. We know somebody who knows them. So we capitalize on the known knowns, and then we go looking for them. And the difference between suicide prevention and counter suicide operations is suicide prevention is static. It doesn't move. You have to go to it. Whereas what we do, as you know, because you do it with me all the time, is we go looking for the individual when we see a red flag or when we hear the warning drums banging on that such and such has just gone through a messy divorce, lost his job, lost his dog. They're all the things that we look for. And I think that the crucial thing in everything we do is to understand what's gone before, look at the history, look at the trends, look at who is most vulnerable, build it into a logical program that allows us to make an informed decision whether somebody is likely to end their life by suicide. And then it is the network of the 10 people on the call line that also form the analysis hub. Before we try and deploy a volunteer to that house to go and knock on the door, reach into somebody's life to make sure that they're not going to make a decision that they may regret. And I think that our aim is always to be there within an hour of being told or identifying a problem. And I can't recall a day in which we have failed to achieve that, to be there within an hour. And I think that's the reach in, and it has two layers. The first layer is somebody nearest the crocodile. So that's one of our 500 volunteers. And then the second layer is it's one of us who are in the car following that up to get there shortly after the volunteer has knocked at the door. And if the moment warrants it, as we have done many times, we phone 999.
Mm-hmm. There's a real linkage between the program that you set up nearly 6 years ago and the Riflemen's Association, which is still in its infancy. We're I was going to say we're a relatively new regiment, but we're not. We've been around for 19 years now. But the sort of antecedents have got their various different associations, which are wonderful. But we haven't really had something for the younger generation that have come through since the formation of the Rifles in 2007. And everything you've described in terms of the picking up on all of those signs and troubles that people might be having in their lives can be missed because of the lack of community. And that's what the association is trying to help with in terms of its creation, is actually giving people an opportunity to be part of an organization that they recognize, that has people in that have had similar experiences to them, where they can talk about the old days if they want to, but more importantly, where they feel at home, and can keep an eye on each other, not in a sort of is everybody all right? It's just they're just connected, and by being connected, they're aware when patterns change and go, wait a minute, what, we haven't seen Joe for a week or two. Maybe we should go and see him. At which point, everything just works as a system, because we've got that community spirit element where people are looking out for each other. So hopefully we won't end up with so many people, falling apart, for want of a better term, that need acute help, because we've managed to catch it earlier. We've been able to identify those signs earlier at a lower level in the structure, which would be an amazing thing. So I don't know whether there's anything that you want to add to that.
When those who are closest to us listened to how the intervention starts, so when one of us ends up going to somebody's house and doing CPR, or taking a knife out of his hand, taking a rope off his neck, do one of those interventions in which you directly save somebody's life. When we talk about that, people immediately get the immensity of the emotion and the pressure of doing that. And they are genuinely in awe of what the program can do and does on a regular basis. And it works out once every 2 weeks we do that. So they get fixated on, wow, you must be really pleased with that. And it's not about being pleased. It's about knowing what happens next, because that intervention, as huge as it is emotionally draining, is the start of a huger, a greater problem, a greater challenge, because now you've got to get this guy back into a community. And thus far, we haven't had a community to put them back into, and manage them into. So we talk about the intervention, the recovery, and the wrap. That intervention is straightforward, and it'll be really intense, and it'll last anything up to a day. If it's an urgent intervention, it could be a day of searching for somebody, eventually finding them, talking them off the bridge, and then getting them into medical help. And then the recovery is to make sure he gets the proper treatment. Not always easy in a dysfunctional NHS, and that is a lottery for postcodes. The real hard bit, the real difficult bit, because it's dispersed right across the Commonwealth and takes up lots of hours and everybody's effort, is the wrap, where you've got to have a community that can man mark them. You've got to have a community that can help them do everything from find accommodation, to find a cure for his addiction, to find him retraining, to find him employment, to help him manage a broken relationship, to help him manage his interaction with the family, probably deal with families courts or criminal courts. That is a massive task. And at the moment, there's just two of us doing that, with the occasional help from yourself and one or two others if it's geographically located. And that's really, really tough. And the reason there's two of us doing it is because there hasn't been an association that young riflemen could assimilate with. They couldn't understand how the old associations do their business, and nor could the old people in the associations understand the young people's behaviours. Because it's a generational gap. So antecedent associations that are still in existence, we can collaborate, but we can't cohabitate. And that is to say that we could go to functions together, we could go to the cenotaphs together, we could gather on a reunion of some description, but we couldn't run the association together in the same building with the same philosophies and the same concepts and the same behaviours, because they are generations apart. But having the Riflemen's Association And when we eventually launched the new look Riflemen's Association, 21 of July, it will be tribal, whereas at the moment associations are geographical, so northwest branch, northeast branch, southern branch, and we've come to realise that that's not going to work for us. We're so big as a regiment with 44,000 people as part of our cohort. It doesn't work. It needs to be tribal identity. So that goes right back to what you're talking about. You need a community. I know nobody in One Rifles. I know nobody in Three, and the others I know a little bit about. So if I want help, somebody's got to come from my community. They've got to come from 2 or 4. They've got to know me. They've got to understand where I've been and what I've done. They need to sound like me, walk and talk a little bit like me, so as I can go, well, yeah, he understands. So needing to grow the association is pivotal for the AARP to dock inside it. So as you get a group of people who can do accommodation, job hunting, remembering that your net worth is your network, form a network around you across the Commonwealth. And then just tucked inside it is a group of people who can focus on a crisis if you're in a crisis. So that whole picture of having a network, and inside the network, you've got a little bubble of experts in mental health and crisis management is how the association should work. And that's the bit that we've been missing for the 6 years we were focused on just dealing with the crisis. We now know that the crisis, as intense and as emotionally draining as they are, actually the harder work, the bigger work, the amount of time we spend on putting somebody back into the community is the big thing. So we're now doing a little bit of reverse engineering where we're going to build the communities.
With it's wonderful with hindsight looking back at how how things might have been if we'd known all of this to start off with, but we didn't.
Yeah,
And like everything this whole journey of 6 years wasn't actually a journey of 6 years. It's been an on running thing for generations, I suppose. And it's all grown organically. It's grown organically around the need at that moment in time. And I think it's a testament to the success of how things have been going that we've now created the breathing space to go, oh, wait a minute, there's a layer outside of this.
yeah,
And this is how we might tackle that. And I think that's one of the beauties about all of this. The program when it started was almost a we don't know what we're doing here, but we know we need to do something different. So let's just start doing things differently. That capacity to make bold moves like that, to um, right, well, let's just start doing something differently and see what happens there. That ability to learn and grow on the hoof, um, I think, has got us to the point where we are. And you and I both know it's never going to be perfect. But we're not after perfection. We're just after better than we've got today. And as long as each day we're better than we were yesterday, then we're going to get to a point where we're going to end up with um, a sort of head of steam that actually we start seeing the benefits earlier, and we find less acute cases because things are being caught earlier by peer groups that are looking after each other, which is exactly what what's been going on through service, and um, and in theory how society should work too. You know,
well, so you'll remember we took a lot of advice when we started this from the experts in all things veterans affairs. So King's College London, Manchester University, anthropologist studying suicides in America. And I'm still very well connected with a lot of these academics who try to understand why veterans end up dying by suicide. And every one of our therapists, including yourself, is absolutely well versed with how soldiers live their lives. What I'm always amazed by is when I give my version of the route to suicide, the professionals go, "Oh, never saw that coming." And I think that's because they are picking their model up from civilian life, and because civilians are greater in numbers than veterans, the majority of the plans and the concepts and the models that they build for preventing suicide are based on their civilian knowledge. And so in the mix is a couple of forensic psychologists, and just last week I had a good chat with a forensic psychologist who trawls masses amounts of data from all around the world, but they're all civilian. So when he compares his questions and his diagnostics for the route to suicide, it's different to mine. And I talk about betrayal and how betrayal can be the catalyst to a soldier down by suicide. And betrayal's not one way, so it's not a one-way street. So just like the outcome of a betrayal where I betray somebody leaves me with a moral injury, and the outcome of somebody betraying me could leave me so comatose in hurt and shame that I want to end my life. And none of the academics have ever considered this. But when we look at the deaths in our regimental family, we can go, just split up with his girlfriend, just divorced from his wife, just denied his children access to his children, on the cusp of jail sentence, on the cusp of losing everything, his family home, his family. We can always go, what's caused that? There's a betrayal in there, a massive betrayal. And it goes to that point I was talking about where you're elevated as a individual, so if you become a sergeant major or a warrant officer or an officer, you've dedicated your life to the army for 30 years and everybody's turned to you for help, and then all of a sudden you're betrayed and you've got nobody to turn to because you are the help. That's a massive fall. And sometimes the betrayal is so great that the consequences are to lose everything, or the consequences are to end up in jail. Well, you want to disempower those authorities that will do that to you. And the way to disempower them is to remove yourself from the equation. Because if you end your life by suicide, you're not going to jail. If you end your life by suicide, you're not going to be divorced. You're not going to be kicked out by your wife. You're not going to be denied seeing your children because you've made the decision to take that gift away from everybody. Nobody can deny you anything now. Nobody can betray you any further. I think the other difference that the psychologists and anthropologists are just starting to wake up to is that if you go into a secure hospital and you deal with patients and you're in there seeing somebody, 90% of those patients in there have suffered lifetime of mental health illnesses. So bipolar, ADHD, schizophrenia. Some of them have been made worse by persistent drug use, but they are effectively from childhood all the way through. And then you look at the veteran who's in there in the same place. His mental health disorders started after his service. So he could be 42, 43. So effectively, he's coming to this party really late in life. Why is it that a soldier develops mental health problems late in life? He doesn't develop them early. Whatever the answer to that is, I can tell you that the solution is not the same for the boy who's had mental health issues since he was 7 to the boy who's just starting having mental health issues aged 42. There's two different problems there. But because we are, we're a nation of convenience, aren't we? We're like, everywhere's a McDonald's. We want it now, and we all want the same. they will be treated the same. So you'll go into the secure hospital, and patient A, career mental health issues, patient B, come to mental health issues, age 42. They'll get the same medication, the same approach, the same therapy, the same everything, but they are two different issues. And I think that until that problem is addressed for servicemen, until that problem is addressed, where something like this program is going to be needed all the time.
I have a feeling that this episode is going to have more riflemen listening to it than others, which is perfect in a sense. Um, what would be your ask to the riflemen out there that are hearing this, that either, I suppose there's two groups. There's those that are struggling in silence, um, and could do with could do with some support. What is it for them? But for the majority, though, they're going to be people that are thriving in life after service and not sure what they can do. Um, so with that larger group in mind first, potentially, what could they do to help us help other riflemen?
The program is built on a model called SARA, which is scan, analyze, respond, and assess. So that larger group, what they can do is scan for us. And they can only scan if they get themselves into a scenario where they can scan. So that's the reach in thing I talk about. It's not about reaching out, it's about reaching in. So turning up at one of the gatherings that we run. So Silverstone is our family gathering. It's a rifleman's family. Turn up there and scan. Look for people who you are concerned about, or look for people who are absent that should be there, and then go, why isn't he there? Or listen to what people, and then either analyze the problem or tell us and let us analyze the problem, because we're then going to react. So I think that's the first thing that the greater people, the greater cohort of people who are thriving and doing well. The thing is, I know everybody's busy. We're all very busy, and I get that. But you've got to prioritize who you're busy for, and remember the reason you've gone on to succeed and thrive is because those people who were struggling at some stage were contributing to the greater good, so as you can go on and achieve. And I think that's something that I certainly, to the officer corps, I always say, serve to lead, lead forever, because you do. And if you read Sidney Jari's book, he'll tell you his biggest regret is not keeping in touch with his junior NCOs and his senior NCOs when he left the army, because he allowed himself to become disconnected. The NHS will tell you that one of the biggest killers is thwarted belongingness. That's when your belongingness has been unintentionally removed from you. That's what happens when you leave the army. It's unintentionally removed from you. Your family's there, it moves everywhere with you. You get out of the army, the family keeps moving elsewhere, and you go back to where you lived. Newcastle, Birmingham, Durham, Liverpool. You're thwarted from that connectedness. And the only way you can get connected is if you attend and go to something where your family of riflemen are. So we heavily subsidize the Silverstone family gala. In all of that, we can get two groups: those who are thriving and those who are prospering, and those who aren't thriving and prospering, and try and stick them under one roof and connect them. And hopefully some of them intuitively will just help, and that will, without us getting involved, and that will solve the problem, because again, it is net worth, network. And then there'll be others who we see and go, oh, well, you better get round there. And I think the very first Silverstone we did, somebody watched it develop on social media and found the courage to say to somebody, actually, I'm thinking of ending my life because I just can't cope with this anymore. he only said that because he saw what was going on in Silverstone, which was great because we were able to go around there the very next day. And inside every Silverstone event, somebody will come up to me and say, "Did you know this?" Of course, if I don't know something, if the program is not aware that somebody is on the cusp of a crisis, it can do nothing about it. Now, we're better at that than we've ever been, learning where people are struggling. But the more people connect physically, not via WhatsApp, not via digital form, the more people connect, and you can look somebody in the eye and you can go, "Yeah, I hear you got a great job, and I hear it's all going really well, but how are you sleeping?" Then you'll get a better answer. Then you'll get a better understanding. And I think the boys who aren't doing so well, you have to make an effort to reconnect, and that is difficult. And we talk about the issue we've got at the moment with a chap living on a boat, and he's in the middle of nowhere and he can't get to anywhere, and he's injured, and the boat doesn't work, and there is he can't connect with anybody. He just physically cannot connect. So we have to work really hard at going to see him. The issue, and it doesn't communicate by phone. The issue is there are plenty of people like that out there who physically can't get out, can't connect, um, and they're the people we need to connect with to bring them back into the family. Allowing somebody to drift away from the family is, it's treachery, it's treason. It's treason to the brotherhood of Riflemen. It's treason to society. We should never allow that to happen.
Baz, this has been a really useful conversation to have to share a little bit about what the program's up to and why, what it is that we're trying to do around all of that. Um, it's been fairly heavy at times. It's a fairly heavy subject. But I'd like to publicly thank you for all of the stuff that you've helped bring us together to be able to create this in the first place. Um, I know how tirelessly you've worked over the last 6 years and what you've sacrificed to achieve what we've achieved to date. And and I know you're going to hate me for saying this and for getting it on camera, but that's by the by. You know, it is leadership like yours, and the things that we're creating together as a result of that that is helping move the needle on what would have been a much bigger problem than the one that we find ourselves facing today. We would not be as connected as we are today without the efforts that you put in over these last few years, and I'm eternally grateful for that and for being able to be a part of it.
Well, Dave, ditto really, because this is inspired by you doing this for 5 years before I turned up and said, "Let me write that program," which is why I turned to you right at the very start to try and understand the problem. And I think, I am asked frequently, or am I told frequently that I should be incredibly proud, and I must feel really um, enthused by doing what we do, and it must give me real satisfaction. No intervention has ever given me satisfaction. No, saving somebody's life is not what makes me happy. I'm doing it because there are good people already doing this, and knowing that I could help them do it better was the key thing. We came on board with a suicide rate of 3 a year, and here we are now at a suicide rate of 1 a year. So the program has reduced suicide by 2/3. Now we're looking wider and deeper at all other aspects of suicides. Now we're bringing in the antecedent regimens. We see we can count more suicides that we wouldn't have counted before, and we can stop more suicides that we wouldn't have stopped before, because now we've made this whole thing bigger. We've done, as of 2 weeks ago, we've done 149 urgent interventions. So that's somebody who's professed to be close to ending his life. That's not 149 people, because some of them people have had 4 or 5 interventions, which is another thing I didn't think we'd be doing, is a repeat intervention on somebody. But I suppose that was the biggest learning curve, is these things don't fix themselves quite quickly. And interestingly, over the weekend, the very first person you and I did an intervention on, who lived in Glasgow, and then we worked tirelessly for everything, all of the things I talked about: jails, accommodation, jobs, employment, retraining, therapy. We did all that. And after nearly 6 years, and he said some fairly horrible things to you and I, as we got him a job, as we moved his house, as we got him out of jail, as we looked after his dog. He said some fairly horrible, horrible things to us. And this weekend, through a third party, I got a lovely text saying, "I'm doing so well. I've never been so well employed. I've never had so much disposable income, and I'm doing really well. Please tell Baz thanks." And I thought, hey, listen, that's temporary, because next week he'll be angry at me again. So I suppose, again, without a network, without having a broader network, it's always going to default into our little group of 10. And once the association is in full flow, which is specifically aimed at the 5 pillars of the regiment, so that's soldiers, families, veterans, cadets, and the communities. Once it's up and running, all this should, in theory, be slicker and smoother and less complicated, and the pressure should be off, because the internal teams should be able to deal with it. But Dave, it's been a real pleasure, as is the last 5-6 years, and the 20 before that.
Apart from that first meeting.
So just for clarity, complete clarity, as a platoon commander, you would have always been the focus of people's frustrations. Part of education as a young officer.
So it's all part of growing up. No, it's just one of those funny things that, is etched on my mind, my first meeting with Baz. But yeah, thank you so much for coming today. It's been wonderful chatting to you, and being able to explain a little bit more about what we're doing and why, and where we're taking it.
Yeah, all my pleasure.
Cool. Speak to you soon.
Thank you for joining us today. If you've enjoyed the conversation, feel free to subscribe and join me and my new guest next time. If you're interested in the work I'm doing, or you think I can be of service to you or your organisation, please email dave@simplicityofmind.co.uk. Remember, see if you can find time to slow down and reflect. Those simple ideas might be worth listening to. Take care, and I hope you can join me in a couple of weeks.